Hey YouTube! In this lesson, we are going to get into hi-hats. And hi-hats, as we learned in lesson 3, have two positions. They're closed and they're open. And when they're closed, it's a short sound. It just goes tap. And when they're open, it has a long tail that goes after that sounds out. So in Korg's IMS-20, that takes up two parts. And I'll play for you the default sounds that Korg provides. This is the closed hat. And that's the open hat. You hear how it's sounding out longer. But since it's taken up two parts, that kind of sucks, right? Because you can't throw in like an extra bass or a sound effect or anything like that. So I like to throw it both together on one part. So let me show you how Korg is doing it, and then I'll show you how I do it. I've set up a sequence here that's got something going off every other note. And you'll notice the octave range has been changed on all of the notes that I'm hitting. And for the first set, it's all going to the max +2 octave here. But then for my replacement for the open hat, has it only going up to +1. So this is what Korg's closed hat sounds like when I've got it doing both parts. It's not bad, you know, but it's a little anemic. It's not really, you know, standing out. It's not doing anything interesting. It's just this kind of noisy and the reason it's a noisy is it is actually just noise. That's all we're hearing here is this noise source on oscillator 1. And some people like to throw in a lot of peak over on the high pass filter in order to make itself oscillate, which does add kind of a metallic-y sort of sound to it, but I don't like to do that unless I have to. And I also don't like to use noise unless I have to. So let's not do that. And instead, since we want a metallic-y sound, let's throw in our ring mod, because ring mods are really, really good for making metallic sounds. And we aren't hearing anything because I haven't turned that on. Okay, so now we get the squishy sound. But if I pitch this up and then fool around with this, you hear how, even though the first oscillator is off, it's affecting how the ring mod on the second oscillator is sounding. And already it starts to sound sort of metallic-y, but we can tweak with that a lot. Even though we're not using the first oscillator, its pulse width will change the way that it sounds when it's going through the ring mod. So right now I'm just honing in on the most metallic-y sound I can get. And I want to play around with the tuning just a little bit here, just so it's not sounding like a perfect pitch. It's kind of messy. That sounds pretty good, but let's now throw in an effect on this. Right now it's got a little bit of compression, but instead let's throw in a lot of valve force. So you hear that's adding all kinds of noise and stuff, but it's not that white noise that we were dealing with before. It's making noises based on the sounds we're providing it. Let's go back and listen to how that sounded. Alright, so it sounded pretty good, but it doesn't have a lot of body to it. You know, I want it to sound very distinct from the snare. So although I don't want to use noise as an audio source, I want to use it, in this case, as a control source. So I'm going to throw the pink noise over into our external signal processor. And I'm going to take the CV out, this is the control voltage out, and throw this into the CV in for VCO2. And as I play with this, you hear it's doing all kinds of weird stuff to our control voltage for what this oscillator is actually doing. So if we shape it, we can fine-tune the noisiness. So this pink noise isn't actually sounding like pink noise, but it is screwing around with what our oscillator thinks it's trying to do by giving it a control signal other than the pitch that we've given it in the sequencer. So now we've got the sequencer telling it that it's this pitch, and then we got this pink noise going through this external signal processor, getting weirded out by this bandwidth pass, and then getting set in and added to what our sequencer is telling it to do. Now you get a lot of different sounds just by tweaking the signal level. I'm just going to throw that up a little bit to make it have kind of a hollow sound to it. Tweaking that a little bit more to give it some flavor. And now I'm using the pulse width once again to find the most metallic-y sound I can find with what we've got. Now let's listen to that. Let's try pumping the volume a bit. It needs more character, so I'm going to pump up the CV here. So it sounds sort of noisy, right? But it's not that same white noise sound that we were getting when we were doing that, you know? And that's important because we're already using a white noise source on the snare, and you might use a noise source on your lead. You know, there's just all kinds of different places where you would be using noise. So if everything's using noise, it just sounds noisy. So here instead, we got our ring mod that's making its own sort of noise that's trying to be more metallic than anything else.